199, what a story. All right, how about this year's draft? Very interesting. Tyler Shough enters the draft with a strong arm of a career best year at Louisville. Also questions about his age. He turns 26 in September. Began his college career all the way back in 2018. Played for 3 different schools over 7 years. And joined NFL Live last week to talk about his age.
I feel like I have all the physical characteristics, but I've kind of gone through all the mental side of it to where I've had to go through lacks of confidence. I've had to go through, being a transfer, being injured, being cut, and all these things that happen in the NFL. And, I just love football so much and kind of just stayed strong and stayed true to it. And I feel like I'm only growing and getting better. So I'm just really excited to kind of continue this process and finish up these last visits and hopefully get some good news at the end of the month.
So Shough is projected to go somewhere in the first 3 rounds. He's going to be 25 years old at the start of this season. Now, since 2020, only these quarterbacks went in the top 3 rounds and were at least 24 years old at the start of their rookie season. Penix, Nix, Levis, Pickett, all a year younger than Shough. So, Dan, you could look at the fact that age brings experience, I guess. How does all of this play into your analysis?
I think it matters. The more you've seen things, the better you are at seeing them in the future. And I understand college and NFL is different, but he still has seen a ton of football. I also like the fact that he's been in a bunch of different programs and a bunch of different conferences. You start in the Pac-12, and all of a sudden it's like, there's a style of football that you're accustomed to there and defenses that you're accustomed to there. And then you go to Texas Tech in the Big 12, and there's a style of offense that is a part of that conference and the type of defenses you see in that conference. And then you go to the ACC, and again, you see a lot of different styles. And so I appreciate that. I also appreciate that it seems like he's handled it all. So all those different coverages and all those different offenses that he's been exposed to can only be a benefit. The question mark that is how much more can he grow? How much more can he be exposed to and stressed from to develop and enhance his game? Or is he near the top? That's something that you got to figure out one-on-one.
Yeah, I think, Dan, you put it really well there. When we talk about quarterback age and why it matters so much to teams and the evaluation process, because we look at a quarterback and they play forever, right? Some of them playing until 40. So you think, well, who's the big deal if they're 26 or 23? It's not about longevity. It's about development and evaluation and where they are in that process. Tyler Shough is a finished product in some ways, probably because of his age. To me, he looks more polished on tape than Jackson Dart. He should look more polished than Jackson Dart. He's 4 years at least older than him. And it does matter to NFL teams because you're not only taking a quarterback for who he is, but for where you think his ceiling is and whether or not he has farther to go. All that said, I do think, to Dan's point, his experience and the fact that he is fairly pro-ready will be a point in his favor in this particular draft because there are a number of teams that are looking for quarterbacks who can play quickly, who aren't looking for developmental projects, and I do think you can classify Tyler Shough that way.
Yeah, I think also because of the draft class that we are in, most teams that I have talked to about Tyler Shough are kind of unbothered by the age. Part of it is because what other quarterback are you going to turn to in this year's class with Cam Ward being gone at number 1 overall? There's no perfect number 2 quarterback. On top of that, another thing that I do think he has working in his favor, while he will be older than either of Bo Nix and Jayden Daniels, and those guys had 10 combined years of starting in college before they got to the NFL. Teams are saying part of the reason why they had a ton of success last year, far from the only reason, but a part of the reason is, hey, these guys had seen a lot of stuff and they played a lot of ball, right? Like Drake May and Caleb Williams were both true juniors who came out and were 2 of the top 3 picks in last year's class. You saw some mistakes last year that looked, quote unquote, more like rookie mistakes as compared to some of the stuff that you saw that bothered Jayden and Bo Nix, which is part of the reason why I still think there's a real shot that in the first 45 picks, we hear Tyler Shough's name called.
Ooh. Yeah, and I agree, Phil. I think that's this consensus among personnel people right now. And we're talking about his age here as if it's a drawback, when in fact there are some teams, I believe, that are probably looking at it as a positive for some of the reasons that Field is mentioning. You all are focusing on the glass being half empty. I'm telling you, it might be half full here with Tyler Shough and his age and his experience and the amount of throws that he's made at the college level. There might be more questions about some of his injury history. That's fair. But the age at this point may be more of a positive than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, my mind goes to Trey Lance, Anthony Richardson, who were physically more gifted and had higher potential, But both you would sit there and go, well, they didn't get the necessary reps that maybe to get them to the point where you have hoped them to be. Exactly. I think to Maya and Mina's point, and Field, you kind of hinted at it, is if you're an organization, it is fair to ask when you're investing that high of a pick is, okay, we kind of have an idea of what we're going to get, but we kind of also have an idea of what we might end up getting in the future. You know what I'm saying? Like, how much better is he actually going to get after his NFL experience because he has so much college experience? I mean,
does the success of, say, a Bo Nix last year, does that play into the minds of these GMs
absolutely.
and these personnel people?
It does. And by the way, I think Bo and Jayden are kind of different categories. I think there's like a chance that we're talking about Jayden Daniels as like a 3-time MVP in the next decade or so. It's a challenge for Bo. Listen, it was a remarkable first season. I would take nothing away from a ridiculously successful playoff season for Bo Nix. The question is, what other levels are there to his game? You're going to see defenses treat Bo Nix a whole lot different this year than they did this past season.
Shough, we were looking up his college starts. He doesn't have the most, even though he's been around forever. He actually has 6 less starts than Cam Ward at 32. Shefty?
Yeah, well, let's just put his age into perspective with one final note about this. Tyler Shough is actually 2 months older than his friend that he grew up with in Arizona, Brock Purdy. So Tyler Shough is 2 months older than Brock Purdy, as strange as that may sound.
Purdy's going into contract number 2.
He was Justin Herbert's backup in college.
Exactly. And he just celebrated his first wedding anniversary, by the way. So congratulations on that. All right. Still.
Men on set with their mouth open.
Can we go there?
My goodness. Colorado held their NFL showcase on Friday, where all eyes, of course, were on Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders. These two, not only the headliners of this year's draft, but also the most complex. Hunter being a two-way star, Sanders being a quarterback with the most question marks. Let's get some answers, though. NFL analyst Dan Orlovsky, NFL draft analyst Field Yates here with us now. Field, you were at Colorado's showcase, so help us understand Shedeur Sanders. What did he look like to you in person?
Yeah, so he's the 16th rated player on my overall big board. So I'm saying to myself going into this pro day, I don't want this to be one of those where he looks a whole lot better or a whole lot worse than I thought he would for this reason. If he looks a whole lot better, I'm saying to myself, should I have had this guy number 2 overall on the draft board and the lock to go to the Browns or the Giants with the top 3 pick? If he looks a whole lot worse, so you're saying to yourself, wait, what are you doing with a mid-first round grade on this guy in a quarterback class that is not regarded like last year's? To me, it looked as expected. Very accurate. This is a guy who can throw with both a little bit of pace, also some touch. The downfield throwing probably impressed me more than I expected it to because we didn't see a ton of it on tape relative to some of the other quarterbacks in this year's draft class. Very confident, can certainly handle a moment. Probably 500 people at this pro day, the most I have ever seen at any pro day, and Shedeur Sanders looked completely in control the entire time.
If you went to that showcase and expected to be wowed physically, then you have a misconception of who Shedeur Sanders is. I think the reality is there's 4 or 5 guys that play that position in the NFL that physically are just rare. They're the only 5 people on the planet like that. That's not who Shedeur Sanders is. Those guys have uncoachable traits. I think Shedeur's got a lot of coachable traits, and to Field's point, that's what you kind of witnessed. The really good ball placement. In rhythm, the timing is fantastic.